There are companies who do seminars and are very slick in their sales presentation who get people excited about prices that are not achievable in the marketplace. If you're 68 years old and you want to retire by 70, time can be of the essence, and no one wants to sell from weakness. Maybe it's a health issue, maybe divorce, partnership breakup.
Gregory, tell me a little bit about your business. I know you're a business brokerage, actually not just a business brokerage. I think you're one of the largest in the Pacific Northeast, but you help business owners like myself position and sell their business. Is that correct?
That is correct. IBA is the oldest and largest business brokerage firm in the Pacific Northwest. So we're on the other coast. And we help owners of privately held companies, family owned businesses sell their often life work and represent exclusively the seller side. Every one of my brokers and myself has one or more state real estate licenses, so we can sell both asset classes for a party. And we help them navigate the sale process to closing. And one unique thing about my firm is that we don't charge a penny of our clients until project completion. And it doesn't matter if it's a 6, 7, or 8 figure transaction.
And you've done this, let me look at my notes here. You've done this 4,400 times?
The company has done it 4,400 times. I've personally done it over 300. I've been with the company since 1994. IBA was born in 1975. I joined in 94 and succeeded the founder, Bill Osofsky, in 2000 when I bought the company from him.
That's fantastic. And you've grown it to 10 locations now. So tell me, with your business, I guess when I was thinking about this, I was like, why would you need multiple locations to broker business sales? Tell me a little bit about the thought process of why you actually need additional locations versus just one central.
Wonderful. I mean, we're doing a podcast. It's a virtual world, but the reality is this is a local business. And one of the reasons we have physical offices is people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Absolutely.
And you're, in many cases, selling a child. You've put a lot of time, energy, and resources into that business. And you really care who's the successor, because it's not only the price, it's your company family. You know them intimately, you know their kids, you know if they're planning retirement or putting people through college. So you care about who you hand off that group to, as you do your customers and your vendors. You probably have relationships with all of those, and you want to pick the right successor, someone who can be successful. Maybe we talk a little bit of evaluation, but everyone knows business valuation is essentially EBITDA times a multiple. Well, when you talk a 5 multiple, that's a 20% return on investment. And that means there's substantial risk. If you want less risk, you can buy a mutual fund, real estate, a variety of different assets. So we need to transition ownership smoothly. The example I often give, we're in the Northwest, if you love clam chowder and you go to the same joint on Fridays for their clam chowder, if they change the recipe as a customer, you may not continue to go there. So even a simple model like that if we don't pass that recipe that has been there for 50 years, and it's the reason people adore that joint, the business can struggle. And so that's one reason we have physical offices. The other is confidentiality. You don't want people knowing you're selling until it's a reality. And if you go into a Starbucks for a meeting or a restaurant, you may run into people you know in the community. By us having physical offices with private conference rooms, we have a venue for discussions to occur out of the public eye. And though Zoom is great, there is nothing better than engaging with someone on a multi-sensory level and having a dynamic conversation without people looking at their phone or maybe taking the camera off. It's always one of my frustrations in a Zoom call because when they take the camera off, my assumption is always they're multitasking.
Correct. I would agree. So I love this. Now let's kind of get in the weeds a little bit. Let's just kind of go back and forth here. I'm pretty familiar with this. I've exited two companies, although small, but I've got two exits in my pocket, and clearly, like when I build businesses now, I have 18 of them. The goal is always to build it the proper way so that it can be exited. So let's just talk about, if there's someone listening to this, and I think there's probably lots and lots and lots of business owners listening to this podcast, and they're all probably thinking, well, what are my first steps? If I'm thinking I might want to sell, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, when do I start getting things ready? What do I start doing? And then what is the process to kind of bringing it full circle to an exit?
Great question, Chris. So there's a lot of education that goes with selling a business. One of my complaints about the industry is there's not a significant barrier to entry, but a good business sale intermediary needs to know accounting, tax, real estate, law, business, sales psychology, a spectrum of different elements. So you want to sit down with someone and understand the road ahead, assemble your team. Do you have an attorney who understands M&A? Because that could be different than your general business attorney. Mm-hmm. Do you have a transactional CPA who can help you with tax allocation and maybe a quality of earnings report? Those sort of things. And then as far as a business broker, the process starts with a business valuation. And we do it for free at IBA.
Really?
Because it serves two purposes. It lets the business owner assess our knowledge, experience, customer service, and learn what the business is potentially worth. On our side, we're determining, do we believe in this business model? Do we want to work with this party? And are they realistic on value? And in our industry, one of my frustrations is with our business model, we have a vested interest in being honest, because if the business is not going to sell, we are not going to get paid. And so why start the project if it's not going to be successfully completed? Unfortunately, in our industry, there are many firms, and I have friends at firms that have deployed this business model, who charge up front for the valuation. And in theory, if they're honorable, the cost will be about the same at the end of the day for professional representation. But often, people will give an answer the owner wants to hear and avoid the hard conversation. If I look at a business, let's say million of EBITDA, given the risk, I think it's a 4.5 multiple. It's worth about 4.5 million. If someone tells the owner it's worth 6 million, they're going to be very happy. They've maybe written a check for $25,000 or more to start that process. They, in good faith, listen to the broker, but unfortunately, they've left all the heavy lifting to the buyer to convince them what the business is worth. And they've cemented a view with the seller who was open to education on why their business is worth what it is. Maybe it's not worth a 6 multiple because 30% of the revenue comes from one customer. And if you lost that customer, there's substantial risk. Does the business even survive? So those type of things impact dialing in a correct multiple. But that's my frustration in the market, is that there are companies who do seminars and are very slick in their sales presentation, who get people excited about prices that are not achievable in the marketplace, where we have a vested interest. We do this full time. We've been doing it for 50 years. We're paid on 100% on performance. There's no motivation for us to be dishonest on value.
It's a good point. Now, let me ask you a little bit about that. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the multiple on EBITDA, but is there any other factors that play into different kinds of businesses? Like, I'll give you an example of my business. We have one of the big things that we're just starting to look into is our data and the value of our data. And we've got some valuations back on that. And I was blown away at what our data is worth. We've never monetized the data, although we probably will in the future. But like when you're looking at a company, you got the EBITDA, but then if you've got proprietary technology or IP, and then you've got data, like, do those get added in, or how do you factor something like that?
Great question. So, and I love geeking out on valuation. It's one of my favorite subjects. So there are several components on valuation. So the first thing is, which we've talked about, is the investment side.
Yeah.
The second side of this triangle is the art side, that each business is unique unto itself. And what is that brand, the potential for appreciation with that brand worth? Because when you fly, you may, and I love to travel, there's a choice with airlines. They all can get you to different destinations. I'm going to Germany for the holiday season. My wife's German, and I prefer to fly Lufthansa to Germany because it's a higher quality airline experience. Just like I like Singapore Air when I go to Asia. It's not that you can't fly with other airlines, but you get different experiences in terms of comfort and quality of the experience. And the same thing is with businesses. So when you talk about appreciation, you're talking about where can that business go with the assets in place. If staying in the airline, if there's a flight on Lufthansa from Seattle to South Africa because I wanted to go on a safari, I may consider that airline because it's a long flight.
Mhm.
And the comfort matters. And then tying that in, and I want to have a conversation on this, is looking at, no different than a publicly traded stock when you buy it, what is the potential of that entity moving forward, because people look backwards in valuation. But the reality, if you bought a business January 1 and we have multiple closings January 1, you're more worried about what it's going to do in 26, 27, and 28 than what it did in 24 and 25. And
Right.
it's no different than if you're buying one of the AI stocks right now, or CoreWeave, or whoever it is out there. You're not betting on the revenue today. You're betting on the future. And I I'm a fan of Elon Musk, and I love his compensation model where
It's all performance
he,
based.
yeah, he's saying, don't pay me if I don't deliver. Well, to me, as an investor, that's speaking that he believes in the future of his company, and maybe I want to get on that train with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that with Elon, not in the slightest. And how far ahead of time, like if somebody wants to exit, how should it be years before, they're ready, or like when should they start thinking about getting prepared? I know there's just a lot of things that have to happen. Sometimes companies need to be reorged. Sometimes you got to put together data rooms and all sorts of different stuff just to get it ready to be sold. But so, like, how far out do you usually want somebody to be before they say, okay, I'm looking to exit, and I want to start with you, but we're looking to exit 2 years from now. Is that, like, how do you handle that?
Wonderful question. It's That's where the valuation is important, in that we will give them a sell now value, but we're educating them on how to adjust the levers. And we don't provide consulting on how to improve businesses, but we have a extensive Rolodex where we can introduce them to people if the accounting and financial side needs to be improved. Maybe it's an outsourced CFO. If marketing needs to be improved, maybe it's an outsourced CMO or a hired sales professional. So we will educate them. And all of our clients don't generally need to sell, they want to sell, because our clients, if you look at the demographic, they're doing what they enjoy, they're executing their vision, and they're making money. Like you just talked about your company, your podcast, or any of your entities.
Mhm.
If you're enjoying it, what's the urgency to sell?
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action, like so many others have, by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up.
Yeah, I think when someone's going to sell, I think there's a lot of factors they need to do. They need to think about life after the sale, especially if it's a business that you've been in for a long time. It becomes like your child. I mean, you're there every day. It's what you do. So then all of a sudden, what happens when you stop doing it because you get a big check? Money does not buy happiness. So what's life after the exit? I think about this all the time, because it's just like money's only a very small piece of the equation. I would have to guess, a lot of people, when they're thinking about exiting their company, they think of it's all about the money, but then they exit, and then all of a sudden they just fall off the wagon because they lost their purpose. I mean, I think about it all the time, and me and my wife talk about it all the time, because in the future we'll certainly have an exit. It's just, I've had to get very clear with what that life will look like after that. Not so much what life is like now or what life will be like when I get a big check, but like, what do you do with that? How do you find purpose again? What do you build next? I don't know. I mean, do a lot of the people you deal with like talk about life after the exit more than they talk about, the check?
They do. It's an important consideration. I mean, I always use a simple metric. If you don't want to get out of bed in the morning to go to work, whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur, it's time to make a change. Life is too short to just go through the grind. But you do need to think about what that next chapter looks like. I had one client who sold items for the nuclear industry, and he still loved his company, but he sold because he gave away the elements that he no longer wanted. He actually stayed an additional 7 years
Wow.
with the business in an outside sales capacity. We negotiated 7 weeks a year of vacation. But why would the new owner not want someone who knew all the customers and the product lines well? But he just decided, I don't want to deal with all the elements of running a manufacturing company in terms of production and accounting and taxes and compliance with issues, because they manufactured products out of lead. So there were environmental issues that they had to deal with. He said, I'm happy to be a rainmaker. And he did that for another 7 years. So it depends on what you want to do with the transaction. Many times we will sell companies to private equity or family offices where our clients will retain a percentage of ownership. And there have been many times when the second bite at the apple is larger than the first. You sell 2/3 of your company, and then someone brings different experience, knowledge, resources. Maybe you're a regional chain and they help you go much broader domestically, and they exit a number of years later, and your 30% ends up being as much or more than your 67%.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot of PE going on right now. Actually, now that we're talking about that, is there, like, you see all sorts of businesses. Are there any businesses right now that are just hot on they're on every PE firm's list that they want to acquire? I know a lot of friends in the service industry, heating and cooling, anything service, like they're getting gobbled up left, right, and center by PE. But what companies right now are, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, the easiest to sell or the most desirable to be bought out or acquired?
Wonderful question again. We have high demand. Actually, market demand is the highest I've ever seen in my 31 years.
Wow.
And that ranges from the $1 trillion on the sideline with private equity, publicly and privately held companies looking to grow by acquisition, down to, we're in the Northwest, I'm based in Bellevue, Amazon, Microsoft are near me. The tech layoffs are driving people into entrepreneurship, because if you're 57, you may not have the resources to retire, and you problem solve. Your spouse has a job, your kids are in school, you buy a company, and then there's a whole founder culture right now where younger people don't want to necessarily work for companies, but they want to create businesses. But getting back to your question, hot spaces right now, services, home services like you described. We just had 17 offers for an education platform.
Yeah.
That people coming out of COVID, people need more support. Unfortunately, my mom was a school teacher. Our public school systems don't seem to be getting it done for a lot of families. So supplemental, both online and in person education, vocational training schools are a hot space. Healthcare, we just sold a virtual mental health business where rather than windshield time to go see a psychologist, psychiatrist to talk about family issues or aging or whatever, that they can zoom in for a half hour and have that conversation from the comfort of your den. Those type of business models combining technology with needs of people, they're not going away.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a lot. I've got a lot of friends that have exited for multiples that I never thought their industry would ever generate. So that ties right into what you're saying, where there's so much demand in it. Now, I want to pivot real quick. I want to talk about a different business you have, and this was interesting, but you didn't really have much. But Win-Win Whiskey, like, is that company still going? Like, what's the story behind that?
It's a passion project. It has not fully launched. I'm a bourbon drinker, and I was looking to create my own bourbon. And so my VP of business development, Kurt Meyer, and I, who's an Irish gentleman of background, Notre Dame grad, decided we were going to create a celebration whiskey. So we trademarked the name Win-Win Whiskey and believe there is a space for it, whether it's successful lawsuits or real estate deals or M&A, to sell a high quality celebration whiskey. So we created it. We've mastered the recipe. We're working with Heritage Distilling, a local distillery who makes a wonderful product for us, and have not taken it into the public market yet. It's more a friends and family product at this stage, but I'm excited about it, and would love to toast you with a triple W.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really cool. I like that concept too, because you're right. Like, when someone sells a company or they're celebrating a win, whatever it is, I just use selling a company just because that's been the discussion. There's always something. Usually you would think, champagne, but I don't like champagne. I hate the way when I wake up, I got the worst headache if I drink anything more than a couple sips of champagne. But bourbon, now that's a novel idea, because bourbon is definitely the drink to drink.
Yeah, no, it's nice to pass around glasses and share a drink of celebration. I'm like yourself. I'm a creative thinker. I've, come up with ideas constantly. For example, a book that hasn't been published yet, it's virtually available on our website, is I hear wonderful stories from our past clients that are often only known in families or small circles. So I have hired 2 authors who tell the stories of our client in a series called American Dream Achieved. And we've done over 50 profiles already where they tell their inception to exit story of businesses in the Pacific Northwest that we have sold over the years. Because working with the clients, they are wonderful stories, started in kitchens, garages, and it's amazing, what people have built over the years. And everyone hears, Jobs or Elon's or different people's stories, but it's much more relatable if, a guy started with 1 truck and a buddy roofing and grew it into a roofing company that's doing 8 figures annually.
Absolutely. The final thing I wanted to ask you, and this is kind of more personal, but when you have an enterprise of companies, so let's say there's 8 companies that make up one company that's going to be sold. So you got one Topco, all the other companies make up the rest. Like, do you value each one of them, or would you just value the Topco? Like, how would you do a valuation with an enterprise of companies?
So this gets back to our valuation is you are correct. We want to value each entity into itself and then as the whole. And we may package product together or spin something off if the value is not within the whole. I mean, an easy example, I sold an 8-location chain of Arby's. And geographically, some made better sense to pair than others and were more attractive. So, did it make sense to sell it 332 or as a chain of 8? We want to evaluate all options and then decide what's the best path forward.
That's a good answer. Really good answer. So if somebody, because, you know, this is a fairly good sized podcast and there's lots of people listening, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, wow, I want to jump on the phone with Gregory to get my company evaluated. Is there like a process you go through? Like how would somebody go about starting the process with you and your company?
Every relationship starts with a conversation. So if someone reached out to us either in person or virtually, we'd engage with them. I have sold companies throughout the Northwest, but also in California, the Triangle in North Carolina, in the Boston metropolitan area. So we do have the ability to represent companies nationwide. We're a little more selective if we need to get on a plane to work with them, but you start with a conversation, you progress to maybe evaluation to strategically plan the best path forward. It's a slow walk because think you're selling a company and maybe we value and we take a couple months to decide to go to market. Then it takes us 3 to 9 months generally to complete a transaction. Then there's probably a transition period after where the selling owner needs to stay on as a consultant or employee to make sure the transition goes smoothly and the business isn't detrimentally impacted. So, what I always tell people, I mean, we're dealing with a baby boomer population that's aging. If you're 68 years old and you want to retire by 70, time can be of the essence because you add, let's say, a year total to get the transaction done to a 6-month to a year period of transition. You're at 2 years. So if you don't get that train moving, you could easily be pushing past 70 by the time you get it done. And no one wants to sell from weakness. Maybe it's a health issue, maybe divorce, partnership breakup. So plan ahead. A common one for us is partners who diverge. One wants to continue to double down and invest in the business. The other one maybe wants to exit and reap the rewards of their success. And maybe it's not an internal sale, but an external sale where the one partner exits with their bag of gold and the other partner stays on vested in 2.0, and it's a positive outcome for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll put that up in the description, folks. If any of you want to book a call, take that first step and have that conversation, we'll put that right in the description of this episode, and you can book a call and see where it goes. I mean, hey, listen, everybody's at a different place with their business, with growing it, and it's worth a discussion to figure out whether looking to exit and move on to the next phase of your life is in the cards. And I think that's how I look at everything, whether or not I want to sell a company or not sell a company, whether I love everything going on in the company. I mean, everything's for sale, right? And there's always the next thing you could be doing. I think the only time you would maybe not do that, and I see this a lot where, a father or a mother have a business, they want to pass it down to their kids. But I think that's a big mistake sometimes, because a lot of times the kids don't even want to inherit the company. They want to go off and do their own thing, but they're kind of forced into that role because, well, who's going to take the company over? I'm sure you see that as well.
Yeah, no, I would comment on that. One solution in that case is to get a SBA loan. We've seen that where a child does want to go into the parents' business, but the parents don't want to finance the sell. So they will work with them where maybe they'll get an SBA loan for 80% of the value. You can go up to 7-8 million with the right lenders to cash out the parents. They maybe keep an equity stake for a transition period, but the business and the child pays off the loan over time rather than the parents' retirement being dependent on the child's success. Mm-hmm. So there's, again, a lot of different variations on how to execute an exit strategy. And you just need to talk and explore ideas. I believe, and I believe you share this, Chris, best decisions are made from a foundation of knowledge, and bringing in the right professional experts to educate you. It may sound really good to buy a rental house, but if you've never owned a rental house and you don't live close by so you can monitor it, or you're going to have to outsource every maintenance expense, it may not be as good for you as is your best friend who is a handyman who has a vast tool supply and can fix everything, because you'll have costs that they wouldn't have when a drain gets plugged.
I completely agree with that. We all have those friends, right? They got a tool for everything.
Yeah.
Well, International Business Associates is the name of the company, folks. If you're looking at, is there a website they could go? Is that just what they would do, is go to International Business Associates?
It's www.ibainc.com. So Ice Cream Boy Apple, Ice Cream Nancy Charlie.com.
All right, perfect. IBAinc.com. We'll put that in the description, folks. So, Gregory, this has been great. Thank you for shedding, some insight on what it's like getting your company prepared for sale and how your company assists people in finding that perfect buyer to ride off into the sunset or do whatever they're going to do in that next phase of life. It's been a real honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, folks. We'll see you all on the next episode of the Money School podcast. Until then, have a blessed day and take care.